If you are thinking about building a no-code app, or maybe you've already started and it's taking a little bit longer than you'd anticipated, you might be wondering if learning no-code and learning how to use no-code tools like Bubble is really worth your time. After all, you are building an app so that you can build an income stream, right? You want to make money, and so you want to make sure that your time invested and your money invested is actually going to give you a significant return. And so today we're going to talk through whether learning no code tools is worth your time or whether it isn't. And to be honest, it really depends. In some situations, it really is worth the time invested. And in others, it's just not. And I don't want you continuing to head down this path if ultimately it's not going to help you meet your goals. Stick around until the end, because if you do decide to move forward in learning how to leverage no-code tools, we have a free deep dive workshop that's going to take you through how to start building your app correctly with no-code tools. If you're new here, I'm Kristen over at Coaching No Code Apps. We help non-technical entrepreneurs build custom apps so they can start their app-based businesses or scale their existing businesses, all without coding. And if that's what you're doing too, then subscribe to this channel below for new videos every single week. Okay, so is learning no code actually worth your time? Well, we're gonna go through the no's first and then the yeses second. So there are a handful of reasons why learning no code might not actually be worth your time, and a handful for why it would be. So we'll start with the no path so you can make a quick decision for yourself. Number one, learning no code is really not worth your time if you are wanting to build and launch your fully finished app, in the next few weeks or month. The reality is, yes, no code tools will cut back on the time spent to build an app drastically, but it's not going to be an overnight process. There's still a lot of learning and technique involved. It's going to take time to not only learn how to use the no-code tool, but also understand different development strategy, because you can buy a set of paintbrushes and canvases and you can look at the Mona Lisa, but are you going to be able to then take those paintbrushes and canvases and paint the next Mona Lisa? Well, no, of course not. And the same is true with no-code tools. You can have the tools and you can know how the tools work, but you're not going to be able to create your ultimate masterpiece of an app unless you also understand the strategy that goes behind using no-code tools, the development strategy, and the frameworks. If you are thinking that you want to come into this and build your Mona Lisa in the next few weeks or a month, then to be honest, learning no-code tools for that reason is probably not worth your time, because you're going to find that it takes more of a time investment to reach the outcome that you have in mind. On that same note, number two, learning no-code tools is probably not worth your time if you simply don't have the time to dedicate toward learning and skill building. Now, again, there's some variation here. We have another video on choosing a no-code platform, and in that video, we talk about a spectrum where we have lots of different types of no-code tools and no-code platforms. Some are really simple, some are more template-based, some are more robust and powerful and kind of give you that blank canvas like Bubble does, right? Well, depending on where you fall on that spectrum in terms of your own needs for your app, the amount of time you need to spend learning is going to vary. But as a baseline rule, if you do not have time, ideally, every day or every few days, definitely every week, to go in and really learn. And I mean, learn and skill build. So not just consume information or watch tutorials, but implement thereafter and get your hands dirty with the tools and actually build something. Learning no-code tools is just not going to be worth your time because it does take time. And more importantly, it takes consistency. What we don't want to happen is for you to spend a couple hours here and there. Maybe this weekend you spend a couple hours trying to learn, and then a couple weeks later you go back in and spend a couple more hours learning. You're not going to get very far because you need more consistency. When you go into your editor and you start building something, and then you step away for a couple of weeks, going back in those couple of weeks later is really going to involve refreshing yourself for the same amount of time you probably spent in the first place, right? You need the consistency because you're not consuming information in order to learn. You are skill building. Number 3, learning no-code tools might not be worth your time if you are someone who really doesn't like problem solving and who gets really frustrated when presented with problems. When you are using no-code tools, the reality is you're building a custom application. And if you're building your app and you're learning how to use no-code tools at the same time, you are going to be faced with constant challenges every single step of the way. It doesn't matter how good the training content you're using is. It doesn't matter how good your coaching is. The reality is you're skill building, right? And so it's going to take a lot of time spent problem solving, trying to solve the same problem in multiple ways, stepping away sometimes because you can't find the right solution, coming back, trying to solve that same problem in multiple ways again. And a lot of times it's going to be a little bit frustrating, right? I'm not saying that we ourselves never get frustrated when we can't figure out a problem after a certain amount of time. That's just normal. But if you can't carry through and then still get excited at the idea of trying a new solution to the problem, or get excited when you figure out that problem and understand that that's going to be a part of the process, right? If that does not sound like an enjoyable scenario to you, then using no-code tools might not be worth your time. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't try. Certainly, development in general, whether you're using no-code tools or not, is just a process of ongoing troubleshooting and problem solving. That's what it is. And so, certainly try, but if you're turned off by that and you find that just really aggravates you and you don't enjoy it, then in the long term, you're probably not going to keep up with the no-code tools that you have learned, and outsourcing could be a better solution for you. Number 4, now this one is a little bit more niche, but learning no-code tools might not be worth your time if your plan is to outsource the development of your application, learn how to use no-code tools while it's being built, and then turn around and take over the application after the first version has been built. Now, this can sound like a picture-perfect plan, right? If you have that upfront investment to get that outsourcing work done, it can sound like you're really just expediting the process, getting the app built, learning how to manage it, and then, hitting the ground running thereafter. In reality, that never actually works out in the way that it is envisioned. And that's because every single developer is going to have a little bit of a different style. They're going to have different best practices. Every single person who teaches development and who teaches how to use no-code tools is going to have a little bit different of a style and different best practices. And so, when you come on board an application that is already built, taking that over is actually a skill that you would need to significantly develop for it to run smoothly. Even some developers themselves have a hard time doing this. And I'm talking about people who get paid to build other apps. It's not an easy thing to do because you have to be able to kind of peek under the hood, figure out how someone else did everything, why they did everything, how everything is interconnected, and you really have to have a solid understanding of the tool and of development techniques, frameworks, and processes to be able to come in and do something like that. And so if that is your plan, I'm not going to say learning no-code tools isn't worth your time, but I would change the approach. I would get hands-on in building that first version of your app directly. And even if you're getting help in the beginning and then taking over it versus outsourcing the whole thing. Finally, number 5, it might not be worth it to learn how to use no-code tools if your plan is to purchase a template like for Bubble, for example, and then just make a few tweaks with some of the information you've learned from watching a few YouTube videos and then have your own custom app. It would be nice if that is all that you had to do, But again, it never really works out that way. It can seem like purchasing a template means that most of your app is already done and all you have to do is make some small iterations. But this is kind of like the last one. When you're purchasing a template, you're purchasing an app that has already been built to some extent. And so it's the exact same thing. If you don't have that underlying skill set to understand how the app was built, why the app was built, everything that's connected, and you're buying the template and you are learning those very beginner fundamental development or bubble skills when you're trying to tweak the template, then you're probably going to find that it is a lot harder than you might have thought. And so generally what we see happening is if you buy a template thinking that it's going to be really simple, people often end up needing to get a lot of coaching or end up outsourcing afterwards, or maybe just scrapping the template and going back and building from scratch so that they can learn from scratch in the first place. Okay, now that we've gotten all the no's out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. Is it worth your time to use no-code tools? We're going to go through the yeses. Yes, it's definitely worth your time. Number one, if you are playing the long game. Okay, now this is something that I love talking about, and I could talk about it for the next hour. I won't. But if you are using no-code tools, or you are starting to use no-code tools because you understand that building an app and building a business is a long game. It's something that happens over time. It's not an overnight success type of thing. Then it's totally worth your time to learn how to use no-code tools, regardless of what you're actually going to be using them for. If you are learning how to use a platform like Bubble because you want to build an app so that you can launch a new business that is a lot more scalable than whatever your current income stream is, then it's totally worth your time. If you are going to be learning and building your app and then managing and maintaining your app afterwards, growing your app, growing a company, growing a team, right? It's totally worth your time to do that, because the type of company and business that you can create can be so incredibly scalable, and it can be so incredibly flexible in terms of how you manage it and how it affects your lifestyle. It can give you so much control. And so if you're playing the long game in that way, it's totally worth your time to use no-code tools. Now, on the flip side, you might not be building an app that you want to turn into a new business. Maybe you already have a business and you just want to streamline some of the processes in your existing business so that you can improve your profit margins. You can improve the health of your company. Well, learning no-code tools is 1000% worth your time, because not only are you going to be able to cut costs on software that you probably currently use and software that you're probably overpaying for and you're probably compromising on, but you're also going to be able to create custom solutions for your business that you can iterate long-term as your business grows, as your team grows and changes. I mean, it's such a valuable investment to make. Number two, learning no-code tools is definitely worth your time if you want to avoid creating a reliance on developers, right? If you are outsourcing the development of your app, then there's going to be a reliance on developers forever. They're the ones who have built your app, and whether you are reliant on those developers or different developers, there's always going to be that reliance. And with that means that you obviously have to pay those developers. You have to find, vet, hire, and potentially manage those developers. That comes with its own set of different scenarios over the long haul with your app. If you want to avoid all that, and instead you want to be self-sufficient with your app, you want to be able to create your own vision because you know your vision best. You want to be able to control your costs and understand how to control your costs. If you want to, maybe later on when you launch, you do want to have developers come on board to help as you grow the app, which you should be thinking about doing, because unless you are wanting to have a very micro product that's just managed and maintained by you forever, which is fine, you're at some point going to be growing a team, right? And if you want to be able to understand how to communicate with developers and understand how complex something is and understand how much time maybe something is going to take to build, right? When you're communicating with developers and you already know how to use no code tools because you're the one who has built your app, well, you're going to have much more effective conversations. And I can almost guarantee that your business as a whole is going to be healthier long term because of it. Number 3, learning no code tools is definitely worth your time if you're also considering maybe creating a side income stream by building apps for other people or doing a little bit of development work or consulting here and there. Maybe you don't want to do it full time. Maybe you do want to do it full time. Well, learning no code tools is something that it's a skill that is in demand in a lot of different ways too. There are consumers who are wanting help building their apps, or they're wanting to outsource the development of their apps. There are companies who are wanting to have citizen developers on board, filling positions within the company in a normal way, but then on the side being able to build, use, manage, iterate no-code tools to help with processes and to help create efficiencies. I mean, there's tons of demand. Number 4, now this one kind of contradicts one that we talked about before, but if you are wanting to learn how to use no-code tools so that you can outsource your app, and then afterwards you can make some small iterations, then it can be worth it to learn no-code tools. Now, again, totally contradicting myself, but it's a little bit different of a scenario. I want you to be really careful with this one. Now, if you have your app built by someone else, then if it's built using no-code tools, then you can come in and change some minor things, some minor aesthetics. I've thought back to, what seems like another life now, whenever I was using a website builder many years ago. And it was so hard to figure out how to make some aesthetic changes that it was common to just hire someone to come and maybe change the size of an image, or adjust something by a few pixels. And that's still a thing, right? That's still a thing that people do, but you don't have to. If your app is built on no-code tools, then you can come in and make adjustments, and you don't have to be completely reliant on developers in order to do so. So if you wanted to change a headline on a page, maybe you're announcing some sort of promotion, well, you don't have to get into your developer's schedule 2 weeks from now in order to plan out that promotion so that they can go in and change the headline on your page, right? You can do that yourself, so long as you know how to use the no-code tool. So if you compare that to outsourcing the development of your app to a traditional development agency that's coding your app in some programming language, well, the idea of doing that might not even be feasible to you, right? With no-code tools it is. But again, be really careful with this one because it's not easy to take over the app from a development standpoint. However, you can come on to the app afterwards and make some iterations, assuming that you've been introduced to the app. At the end of the day, whether or not it is worth your time to learn how to use no-code tools completely depends on your goals, the yeses and the nos that we've talked through. Hopefully you can kind of fit yourself into one of those to make a smart decision for yourself. And if you resonate with any of the yeses that we talked through, and you want to make sure you're building your app correctly and launching your app correctly with the right tools, with the right development strategy, with the right mindset and frameworks, then head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop. We have an updated deep dive free workshop that takes you through the steps that you need to make sure you're scoping your app correctly, that you're using no-code tools correctly, that you're using the right platform, that you are really having realistic goals for your app in the first place. So whether you've just started building or maybe you're still in the planning stage, this is something that you need to go through to make sure that the time investment that you're making now is totally worth it. So head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, and we will look forward to seeing you there. And hey, if you found this video helpful, if you could give it a like down below, we'd really appreciate it. It helps us help more people build and launch their apps using no-code tools. All right, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.